Have you ever fancied making patchwork or quilting and you had no idea where to start? If so, then this could well be the video for you. Hello everyone, I'm Caroline and welcome to my home on the hillside here in Wales, where I've been doing some sewing. I've been doing some English paper piecing. There are a few different methods for making patchwork, and my preferred method is English paper piecing purely because it's what I grew up with. And this is a quilt I made about 10 years ago. I made this for my mother-in-law and she loved it, and it was on her bed every day. And she passed away last year and I got the blanket back, or the quilt back, and I thought you might like to see it. Now, this was made mainly with fabrics from Hobbycraft, which is like Hobby Lobby, I suppose, in the US. And, well, you can probably, if you go to Hobbycraft or Hobby Lobby, you can probably recognise some of these patterns. You may even be able to date it a bit more accurately than me. Now, this, as most of my quilts, is absolutely riddled with mistakes. But I don't care because I love making them. People appreciate them, so they may not be perfect, but they're made with love, and that's what counts. So if I show you this one, I made the centre with hexagons, or hexies as some people call them, and then I put on, I can't show you the whole thing, I'll take a picture of the whole thing and add it here, if I can. It's rather large. And I added on, this is called sashing, so this straightened off all the edges of my hexagons and just give it a frame. And then on the back, I put this green cotton fabric. Now, before I folded this over to make the binding, I got the quilting done. And I love the way quilting looks on an absolutely plain piece of fabric. I think I think it looks nicer than if it's on the pattern side. But it just holds everything together. And then when I'd finished all this, using my machine, I folded over the excess I'd left and turned it into the edging on the quilt. And the colours on this I love. The green and the pink for me just do it. So look at that. And this is, I'm not sure how big it is. I think this is about 5 by 6 feet, I think. So, enough of looking at this quilt, because if you're a beginner, you think, oh, I could never make that. That's ridiculous. But everything in this quilt is it's modular. If we look here, can I find you one? I started off with a centre hexagon. Then I went round it with pretty colour petals. Then I went round it with pretty colour greens. And in between, I decided, what about some sky? So I went around there with sky colour blue. So it looks very technical, but it's so much easier. And I'm going to show you how to do this. I reckon that by the end of this video, you will be perfectly capable of making yourself something little to try out. English paper piecing using hexagons. So let's pop this out of the way. And I'll show you what I've been working on. I've got lots and lots of these. Now, there are two ways of getting these. These are the basis for English paper piecing, as you can imagine. You're making pieces out of paper, and it's an English method. You can either get a little stencil. Now, I got a stencil here, but I can't find my little one. So I'll show you the bigger one. That's what I use for my bigger hexagons. Draw around them, cut them out very carefully because they really have to be accurate. But as long as you take your time, settle down in front of a TV show or put something on YouTube. I've just noticed you're a bit wonky. Let's straighten you up. There you go. You shouldn't feel so giddy now. So you're going to need lots of these. Now, there are two ways of it. As with everything with quilting, there's more than one way to do it. So I'm going to put those out of the way over there. And I've got this. Now, you can either use a flimsy paper. You don't have to pay a lot for this. This is used copier paper I've had. You can use those little menus they keep posting through your door for takeaway foods. They're perfect. Any advertising brochures, anything like that. Draw around on your paper, cut them out, or make a printout. And you can download those. If you go onto Pinterest, I'm sure in there, if you put in free hexagon prints, then print out, you'll be able to print off lots and lots of sheets and cut those out. That will save you a lot of time. But as long as you don't get to the point, oh, I've got to get this done quickly, you'll enjoy the process. And I do. I quite enjoy drawing around them, but I do cheat and don't draw around them when I'm using something like a diamond shape because, it's very fiddly. Anyway, moving on, because now we need some fabric to wrap around this. And I've got this shirt. I think this is really cute. These little teddy bears, just a scrap. I don't even know what that came off. I've got lots of scraps I've gathered over the years. Bring my pincushion in. And now I'm going to pin this to this scrap. Now, if I wanted to, I could be really economical here and get 2, perhaps 3 out. Oh, I don't know. It's got a cut in it. Never use a bit that's got a cut like that because it will start to fray. I'm wondering if I can get one of these bears' faces in the right position. Oh, I think that'll be cute. If I put that there, then that little pink bear will be peeping out of the top. So I pop that on there and pin it in place. Now, you can pin every corner if you want to, especially if you're doing larger hexagons. 2 is plenty for me. Pop that on there. And you do find your pins pop off the end. Get yourself a fabric scissors. Now, the standard, not every time, but the standard little seam allowance you would leave is 1/4 inch. That is if you're sewing things together with a sewing machine, because then you can use your foot as the 1/4 inch measure, not your real foot, your foot on your sewing machine, don't use your real foot. And then it just all lines up nicely. But for this, it's not so important. You just want to make sure you've got enough to fold over comfortably. Now, I know some people fold over so much fabric. If you find that easier, if you don't like cutting, I'm pretty sure some people just take a square and fold it around the piece of paper. But it makes it very difficult for quilting then, because you've got so much spare fabric on the back, you can't get your needle through. So just chop like that, and that is completely inaccurate, but that doesn't matter. And then I've got some bits and pieces. I may be able to use those. I think that is definitely too small. So next thing you need to do is to fix this to the piece of paper. So for that, you need a needle with some thread. I've got some here, and it's not the same colour as the fabric, because otherwise it's very difficult to see when you take the basting back out. Now you fold over the edge. You can feel that it's close to the edge of the paper. If you fold it, and you can feel it's a bit floppy because you haven't folded it enough. So fold it until it's against the edge of the paper. And because this is such a small piece, you really only need to do 1 stitch per side. If you're using a bigger one, if you're not used to doing this sort of thing, I would recommend you do 2 stitches. So 1 there, and then go to the next edge, fold that over, make sure it's nice there. And then, this sounds a bit weird. I don't know if anybody else in the world does this, but before I put my needle in, I just drag it down a little bit there, see if I can show you, like that, and then pop it in, and it gets a nice tight fit between the fabric and the paper. And then make sure you folded it and it's in the right place. You get faster at this every time you do it. I can get them done pretty quickly now. Turn it around, fold it over. Slide, we don't have to do this, it's purely optional. I slide my needle down, nice snug corner, and up, and you can see I'm only doing 1 stitch. But if this was a bit longer, you'd put another stitch in there as well, just for extra safety, so that you don't have your fabric sliding off the edge and giving you a wonky seam. And we're nearly there. It doesn't take long at all, and it's very therapeutic. I think the trick with this is never to rush. If you go to rush, you're going to get frustrated. I think I can take my pins out now because it's pretty much held in place. If you'd rather leave them in right till the end, leave them in right till the end. It doesn't matter. As long as you can get in the right mindset for this, it's lovely. And to see more and more of these appearing, especially if you're making something like a quilt. You make so many of them. Now we're nearly there, and I'll show you how I finish off. Again, there are so many ways to finish off. So I'm going to come back up. You can see I'm rushing ahead of myself because that's how I do it now, as well fast. I've already folded that corner into there, and then all I do is back up and down over the top of that stitch. I don't want this sealed too much because this basting has to come back out. And then snip it off, and you've got yourself... I'll pop that in there. You've got yourself a really cute, look at that. I like that. This is why I like playing with little bits of fabric. You can do things like this, little surprises. Now I've made a lot more of these. I've joined them together. I've got this flower with a yellow centre, and then if you want to coordinate these, you can. If you want to make them a bit like a dolly mixture, which I wanted to do, then you can put them like this. And I've got this one And I'm going to show you how I made these and how easy it is. You think, oh, where do you start? That is the most difficult thing. So you start off with your centre. I know, I've got some more here. I'll show you on some separate ones. What have we got here? Just grab a handful of other colours I got. So get your centre. Work out what colours you want. I'll just stick any on. Let's see if I was going to put a jumble on. There, like that. That's not a very nice combination, is it? Still, it'll do. What I always do is take one of the petals and the centre, fold them over like that, sew along this edge, and then when it's sewn, I open that up, check it's okay, and then get my next petal and sew that onto the side of the first petal, and then you can finish off. If I move all these out of the way, where's my teddy bear gone? I've lost my teddy bear. Where's he gone? He'd gone to play in the tub with the other hexies. You can see I joined the petal here to the centre and then added another petal on, came up there, finished off. Start again along the centre of the flower, join another petal on, finish off the thread. Same here, and I'm at this point now where I've gone up to here and I'm ready for my next petal. So get yourself some thread, add a needle. Now, I don't know, some people do a twisty thing to get the knot in the end. I do it the way my granny taught me, which was just to lick your finger a little bit, roll it around, roll it over like that, and it makes a knot. I won't do it again because I've already got a knot. So now fold over the two pieces that you want to join. And this one here always seems a bit bulky, so I like to fold that. It's amazing how firm you can be with these. You don't have to really be delicate with them because they're pre-sewn to their paper pieces. They're quite sturdy. So now I come up, show you I'm chatting away. See, I just do this naturally. I'm trying to slow myself down. So I go underneath there and then pop out just at the top there. And now my knot is hidden. But that knot, I don't like to rely on those knots. So I take a little bit from the first yellow hexie and a bit from there. Hope this is focusing for you. Then I get the end that's nearest the hexies, wrap it around twice, and then pull it through. And that makes a nice secure knot. So if at any point that knot came undone, it doesn't matter. And now, just going to take little stitches. Take your time with this when you're first starting and it'll become second nature. It's like when you learn to drive. You think, I'm never going to be able to do all this, especially in the UK where we generally drive manual cars. You think, there's no way, I can't handle the clutch, the steering, the gears, everything else, and then expect me to read the road signs and know where I'm going. But in the end, you don't even know what you're doing. You're not thinking it. It's not you don't know what you're doing. You're not thinking because it's just natural. And you can see the speed I'm going now, which is about the speed I usually go because I don't rush. You won't do that speed at first, I don't expect. And don't try to because you'll get frustrated. Start off really slow, pick up a little bit from the one, a little bit from the other, push it through, give it a pull. Don't pull it too tight. If you pull it too tight, you'll start to wrinkle it all up and it'll look ugly. But make sure it's nice. You've got a little bit of a firm feel. When you pull like that, it's nice and firm. And then when you get to the end, now this is where you learn about fudging, because if you look, slight difference there. They're not exactly the same, but I go in the corner of that one, the corner of that one, and you fudge it a bit. You make it fit. Now the bigger the hexagons, the more difficult it is to get them to fit naturally, so you tend to have to do a little bit more fudging. Well, I do. I'm sure there are some people who can do it perfectly, but that's not me. Right, I think I'm going to have him sticking out. Oh, I really like him. He's very cute. So now, if he's going there, if you just stick it on, you could get it wrong. Put it where you want it, and then fold over the bit you need to join. And then I'm just going to sew up here. And it's funny, while I was getting everything ready to show you this, I thought, when did I first start quilting? Because I've quilted as long as I can remember. Now, my mother wasn't a sewer. She wasn't a sewer or a cooker, so I didn't really learn much in the creative way from my mother, but my gran was very creative. She was a sewer, or a sewist, some people call it now, don't they? And she was a gardener, And she had hybrid tea roses. They were enormous, and the smell was just so overwhelming. She was such a good gardener. And she used to make her own clothes, things like that. She knitted a bit, not much. More when she was older and she didn't want to be up at her sewing machine, she knitted. But her one real love with fabric or anything like making clothes then was sewing. So that's where I got all the love of this. But I don't ever remember her teaching me to do it. So I'm thinking, where on earth did I learn to quilt? I have no idea. You can see a really bad job there. Can you see? There's a whole millimetre there, but fudge it. Stretch it up a little bit. In at the corners. Do your double wrap around like that. Pull it through. You've got a nice knot. And now you need to finish off. Now, the way I finish off, some people put 2 knots there. I go under here. And just pop it out there, the needle. And then I just do a little stitch there. Just to give it a bit of extra security. And now we're nearly there. So I get some more thread. And I'm using this, which is a neutral colour. Now, in the quilt I'm going to show you in a few minutes, depending on how long this takes, perhaps more than a few minutes, then I've used a different colour cotton to sort of coordinate with the colour I'm using. But with this one, because it is so many different colours, if I use red, it's going to look awful on the yellow. If I use yellow, it's going to look awful on the black. So I'm using a neutral colour. A mid-grey, mid-beige, something like that. And that way then, you can see the stitches don't really stand out. Unless you want your stitches to stand out. Or if you don't care about your stitches standing out, you think that it's going to be a design element. Then you can use whatever thread you like. So I'm coming through there again. Joining my little cute teddy bear onto the bottom and up the side. If you let me know in the comments below, how many of you have done English paper piecing? How many of you have heard of it? You may never have heard of it. And how many people been a little bit put off at trying? And also then, of you who have been put off a bit, let me know if you think you can give it a go now. I do love reading your comments. It's always great fun, and I love the tips that people give me. Like this needle now, I threaded this. You may have noticed it didn't take me ages, because my eyes are starting to go a little bit tired now. But I threaded it very quickly because it is a easy thread needle. It's got like a little, I don't know if you can see on there, like a little dip in the top, and you just pull the thread through the little dip. And I was very sceptical. I thought, they're not going to work. You're going to start sewing and the thread's just going to keep falling out. And then Ed Creative commented and said, no, he uses easy thread needles because he finds them easier. So I thought, well, I'll give it a try on Ed's recommendation. So I went and I got myself, I had 4 strips. I don't think I can find them now. It was a pack about this big with 4 pieces of black paper on. And they were, I don't know, about 15 needles on each piece. And I had that for 99p from What? Yes, we have a shop in the UK called What? Exclamation mark. Sure seems a bit odd to me. Exclamation. Should it be what? Question mark. Or what? Question mark. Exclamation mark. Can you just put what? Exclamation mark. It's something I've never thought about until I saw that shop. I thought, well, 1, it's a very silly name. And 2, I'm not sure about the punctuation. Fortunately, it's a sort of name shop you think, I've got to go and see what they sell in there. And you pop in and they've got a bit of everything. Other than fabric, I've never seen fabric in there. And I do love a nice fabric shop. Even if I don't buy it, I like to look. Have a dream. Because some fabrics, wow, they're so expensive. You can pay £30-40 a metre. You can probably pay more, I would imagine. But that's the only ones I've seen are like £30-40 a metre. The most expensive. So now I've done my little twirly thing at the end to make another knot, and then that little extra stitch there, chop it off, and now we have, ta-da! So now I want to make this into a pincushion. And so far it's easy, isn't it? If you wanted to, you could just make loads and loads of these and join them all together and you've got yourself a quilt. But I know sometimes if you're beginning, it's nice to make something and actually finish it. So to make a pincushion, you just get these and you pop them together. You can't sew them together like that. That's not going to work. So get them so they match. Then find a needle. Now I think I'm going to put a bit more thread on that. Don't get tempted to put too much thread on. I do. I admit it. I have to put my hand up and say I quite often put too much thread on, and then you spend most of your time trying to untangle knots. So you're better off doing, I think somebody said till your forearm was long enough, but I like it a bit longer than that. Right, make sure they're lined up. It doesn't so much matter about the colour because it's going to be on the other side, but I think I'm going to take that pink around there away from the other pink. And I think we're pretty good there for not having anything doubling up, but it doesn't matter if you do. Right, so I'm going to come in now. Same as when we join pieces together. Exactly the same method. It's just that we're going to be joining two pieces together that are already formed into flowers. So when I've got my needle through where I want it to be, do that little wrap around the needle twice, pull it through. Then, in case you were wondering, this is what they call whip stitch. And it's just over and over. And if you find that your cotton has wiggled up like that, pull it down a little bit, not too far, but otherwise you end up, your arm is miles away by the time you manage to get any firmness on your stitch. There, that's better. So now it's going to be exactly the same. I'm going to sew up each section, and either end of the section I'm going to do one of those double stitches. So I'll turn the camera off now. Or shall I speed this up with some music? I think you might enjoy seeing the stitching process. So I'll speed it up with some music, I think. You're about to find out what I decided to do. Now we've got this. I've left two sides unsewn, but the next job is to get the basting out. So if you look, you can see where you've done a double stitch. If you pull gently, one or the other will come out easily, and then if you're lucky, once you pulled out that double stitch, you can grab the knot on the other end, pull like that, and then out comes your piece of paper. And you can use those again until they get really floppy. It's difficult then to use. Two of those, and sometimes this happens. I've done it again. I've accidentally sewn the knot into the stitching at the top, so I just snip the knot near the stitching without snipping the stitching, and then pull that out. So again, look for the double stitch. There's your knot, gives you an indication it's almost at the knot. Pull your double stitch, pull your thread out, pull your paper out. Now it's interesting, something I'm learning about patchwork and quilts, and it's so interesting. And one of the things that I found out is when people used to English paper piece their quilts a long time ago, when they were very poor and very cold and they had very little heat in, they would actually leave the paper in. They never took the paper out because that was just another layer of warmth for them. So even though nowadays, see, I've done it again, just snip my knot like that, pull it out. So nowadays, although the warmth is nice, we do have luxuries like heating and things like that in some countries, not all countries, I do appreciate that. But then they were just desperate for any heat at all. And so by leaving the papers in, it worked perfectly. And they never washed them. I don't think, if they did wash them, it wouldn't have been very often. It's not actually recommended that you wash a very old quilt. I did have an old one. I'll confess this year, as long as it doesn't go any further. I bought an old quilt and I had it really cheap. I didn't think it was anything special. And it was a bit grubby. And I thought, I don't know. I don't want to have that in the house unless it's had a wash. And it was before I understood anything about old quilts. About how you should look after them, shall we say. So I put it in the washing machine. And then I didn't tumble dry it. I was going to tumble dry it. And I didn't. I hung it across my dining table and down over the dining chairs and just left it for a few days, turning it occasionally, and eventually it dried. And much later, when I didn't have the quilt anymore, I found out that it was actually a very valuable quilt, probably from about 1870, and it was a whole cloth quilt. And I put it through the washing machine, and I think anybody who was a quilt conservationist, whatever you call them, would have fainted if they'd seen what I'd done with it. As it was, it survived. And it's now, somebody else has got it. It was just too big for me. It was massive. It was obviously not a well-done quilt. There was no pattern in the quilting. It was just very basically quilted. But so there you go. If you find a quilt, an old quilt in the shop, don't put it in the washing machine. So now we've done that, we can turn this in the other way. And you could leave your papers in, but I wouldn't recommend it because papers can dull your pins. What I do if I'm sewing a lot of hexagons, attaching them to the paper or any paper, I'll show you those there, then I tend to keep one needle for that and another needle for just the stitching on the edging or the whip stitching, because otherwise you end up, you blunt all your needles. I've heard that you can stuff these with, is it walnut shells? I think it's crushed walnut shells, and that's supposed to keep your needle sharp. I can't find any crushed walnut shell online. Did look. I don't know how successful I'd be at crushing my own. It could take forever. So mine is going to be stuffed with stuffing. And one of the things I like to do is save money, and so I don't buy stuffing. This is in our charity shop. They put the price up now. They used to sell 2 cushions for 50p. Now it's 2 cushions for £1. Double the price. So no matter how horrible and nasty they were, I'd take the cushion cover off, throw it away if it was bad, or keep it if it wasn't, and make something with it, and then wash the cushions. And when they were thoroughly dry, take all the insides out, and you've got yourself some nicely washed stuffing for virtually nothing. Try not to put too much in at once, because it's very difficult to stuff your points if you do. What's that piece of thread doing there? Get out the way. So stuff each point first, and then the centre. And it's up to you how firm you want this stuffed. I do like a nice firm pincushion. If you don't want all the fuss, if you've tried sewing your hexagons onto, or your fabric onto your hexagon pieces of paper, and you think, I'm done for now. I just need a break now to process what I've learnt. I don't want to sew all those together. It's going to take me forever. You don't have to. If you make bigger ones, then I'll show you here. You just sew around 5 of the sides and then stuff it there and sew the edge down, and you've got one hexagon shape instead of all these, which is 7, I think. Is it 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7? Yes, 7. So if you really don't fancy doing all this work, then that's much quicker. And then we come to the most fiddly bit of all. So you can have a good laugh at seeing how I cope with this. I think I still need some more in the middle. Thing is, the place the pins are probably going to end up most in is the middle. So I want to make sure it's nice and firm. Like that. And then, if you want to, you can pin these up. I'll pin them up. I'll use a smaller pin now. So pin the 2 edges together nicely like that. I'm not going to pin this side, otherwise the pin's going to get in the way. And I'm going to go up and under. I think that's a rugby thing, isn't it? They do up and under in rugby? I think so. I know Wales is supposed to be a big rugby country, but I've never really been into it. I know, I'm shocking. And now we're going to try and keep these pieces folded while we sew around with a whip stitch, but as small as you can manage. So I'm going to do my usual. You don't need to do that, it's just that I do it just to be extra doubly, trebly safe. That knot there. And then teeny tiny little whip stitch all the way around the outside. And yes, this is fiddly because it's not a uniform shape. So you try leaning on something and it just rolls around the place. Keeps moving. I'll show you there. There is a way of doing this invisibly, but yes, okay, you could say it's an excuse for me not to do it that way, but I like the fact that this looks like it's been handmade. At the end of the day, you can pick these up in shops, yes, but they've not got the love and care in them, the thought process. They just, in one sense, sterile, if they're just mass made. Whereas if you're making them yourself, especially for somebody, for a gift, then I think it's nicer to be able to see the process. Or is that just me? What do you reckon? Do you like to have something you can see the process, or do you like to have something, a nice slick job where there's no stitches showing? Not that either is right or wrong, we're just all so different, aren't we? Get rid of that now. Always amazes me how different we are when our brains are sort of the same. Our taste buds, our tongues are designed in exactly the same way in each one of us, and yet we all have what we like, what we don't like, what we love. Not that I'm mentioning chocolate here. Oh, Easter's coming. Terrible time, Easter. You go out, you buy the Easter eggs for everybody, and then you're sitting there in the evening, you fancy some chocolate and think, no, I must not pinch somebody's Easter egg, otherwise I've got to go buy another one. Am I the only person who thinks these terrible thoughts? I'm not very good at self-control and chocolate. I'm better if it's not in the house. As soon as it's in the house, my brain keeps thinking, you need chocolate, you need chocolate. And it's really not good for me. So now we're coming to the end. Now I'm going to do my little wrap around again. And now to hide the thread, I love doing this, poke the thread back in where it came out. And then poke it right into the middle of the pincushion and poke it up there. Pull it through. And then snip it off. So gone there. And then when you pull it out, whoop, it pops in. Now, got a fiddly manipulation time. There we go. And we've got a pincushion. Now you can put a button in the middle there. It gives it a little bit of more of a flower look, but I find it just gets in the way. I like my things to be functional. And like if I show you here, this is a pincushion. I bought this for 55p about 15 years ago now. And it's a Chinese one with little people. And can you see the state on the silk? It's gone. So I just woven myself a new piano stool. And there was a little bit of fabric left from my weaving. So I pinned it on. If I took all the pins out, it would fall off. And it's lasted me. It's very functional, but it's full of pins. This is usually full of pins. It's just I got a lot of pins in my one quilt at the moment. I'm getting ready to baste. And now I got myself another pincushion. And it'll squidge in nicely. The more you use it, the more you bash it about, the better it'll get. And you know, still, look, I've still got some points are not out properly. So there you go. What do you reckon? Do you think you could make one of those? I bet you could make one of those really easily. It might take a bit of time because you are a beginner, or if you're not a beginner, you could whip one up in no time. But I am going to show you one last thing before I go. Well, I'll show you two. I've got this, which is a lot more of those little things I'm making, those little hexies, because I want to make a quilt. And I want to make a really elaborate one with lots of small hexies and patterns and a bit like a kaleidoscope. But it's going to take years. So every now and then I get out this and I add a few more to it. I just use some, so it's going to take a bit longer now to actually get it full. But another thing I'm working on, seeing as we're on the subject of hexies, as you can see they're basted onto paper, joined up. There's my lots of little stitches. I'm using red, or it's like a rose pink. This for everything, because I've got some red, some pink. They've all got a strawberry centre. So I'll show you lots of pink ones. And then I got, that's from a gardening magazine. So you can use anything. And then further down, I love this one. This fabric's gorgeous. So I had to put some of that in. Some of them are not so astounding, but if it's all astounding, I think there's nowhere for the eye to rest. So I've got this one. I love this one. Nice and deep. Let's get down to the reds. There's more pinks there. I've got some sort of whitey reddy ones. And then I got some red ones. And these here, I made sure the lines lined up. Look at that. So what am I going to do with all these? Well, I'll show you, because I've made a start on putting this together. If I move those over there, I've got this. Nope, that shouldn't be there. Let's move that one out the way. This is how far I got. This is a grandmother's flower garden, or granny's flower garden. Everything's rolling around here. I was going to put a layer of white around each, but I quite like the idea of them all joined together like a really full, abundant flower garden. So I've got a whole quilt worth to assemble. It's going to take a while, but I don't mind. I love it. And it's lovely to see something like this grow. So if you can make one hexie, you can make a pincushion. And if you can make the flower to make a pincushion, you can make one of these flowers. And if you can make one of these flowers, you can make a lot of them. Join them together and they fit in perfectly. Look at that. It's like a jigsaw. And you can make yourself a quilt. So I would love to hear from you. Are you going to try or not? Oh, I hope I've encouraged you to give it a go, because I know you can do it. Right, that was a long video. I'm now going to edit it, but I hope you enjoyed it. And if you did, then please give me a thumbs up. If you haven't already subscribed, don't forget to subscribe. And if you know somebody who loves sewing, tell them about my channel if you wouldn't mind. And then if they come over, the more the merrier, because I know not everybody loves sewing. But if they do, then they're going to enjoy this, because I've got a few projects on the go. And I think you might like to see them. Well, I'll see you all next time. But until then, don't forget, happy stitching and have fun. Bye.